NBA star LeBron James blunders on Hong Kong, while U.S. lawmakers pass landmark legislation, and a breakthrough in the U.S.-China trade war? That and more on this week's China Uncensored. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This week's China news headlines. Hong Kong, the city version of the "This is fine" dog. Protests have continued there for 131 days. Hong Kongers are upset about the Chinese Communist Party trying to annihilate their freedoms, and how the Hong Kong government and police force are being pawns of the Communist Party, and definitely the police brutality. And pro-democracy legislators made very clear what they think about Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam at her annual policy address this week.
Hong Kong's protests moved inside the city's legislature on Wednesday. The city's least popular post-colonial leader had her annual policy address adjourned after some lawmakers stood on desks, chanted protest slogans, and held up banners of Carrie Lam with blood on her hands.
Hey, that's Tanya Chan. I just interviewed her. I'm glad to see she's doing well. The lawmakers were also chanting the popular slogan, 5 demands, not one less. The protesters have 5 demands of the Hong Kong government, including an investigation into police brutality. Carrie Lam had to cancel her speech and do a pre-recorded broadcast later in the day, but don't feel too bad for her. Feel bad for Jimmie. He's the head of the Civil Human Rights Front. They're an umbrella group that's organized some of the biggest rallies over the past few months, including this one from June 16th, with 2 million people in a city of only 7 million. The Civil Human Rights Front has always made a point of keeping their rallies and marches peaceful and nonviolent, something the 4 men who attacked Jimmie with hammers clearly do not value. That was the second attack on him in less than 2 months. And do you know what Jimmie said as they put him in the ambulance? 5 demands, not one less. Sham had head wounds and is still in the hospital, but he's going to be okay. Meanwhile, the Civil Human Rights Front is planning another march on Sunday, for which they posted this upbeat slogan, "You can't kill us all." Historically speaking, that hasn't stopped the Communist Party from trying. Of course, the protests in Hong Kong have caught the attention of the American public as well, especially thanks to the NBA. Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey tweeted this image supporting the Hong Kong protests. And then the entire NBA attacked him, because the NBA has $4 billion on the line in China. And the Lakers and Brooklyn Nets were also about to play an exhibition game there. Just as the controversy was dying down, LeBron James also criticized the original tweet.
We all talk about this freedom of speech. Yes, we all do have freedom of speech, but at times there are ramifications for the negative that can happen when you're not thinking about others and you're only thinking about yourself. But I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand, and he spoke.
Then there was a huge public backlash.
Protesters in Hong Kong burned and trampled his jersey, while here at home, critics piled on. And LeBron James memes are trending on Twitter.
Then LeBron James said that it was very hard for the Lakers in China that week, so Morey should have waited a week to send the tweet. Yes, he's had a difficult week. Meanwhile, the people of Hong Kong enjoyed sunshine and rainbows, and the police handed everyone ice cream. But I personally think we're being too hard on LeBron James. After all, he's single-handedly kept this story in the news, giving more people the chance to learn about what's happening in Hong Kong and how repressive the Chinese regime is. Plus, LeBron has overcome a lot of challenges in his life to get where he is. He truly is an inspiration. I mean, can you imagine how hard it must be to play professional basketball without a spine? Meanwhile, and I can't believe I'm saying this, American politicians have shown that they do have a spine. The U.S. House of Representatives has passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. Hong Kong has special trading status with the U.S. It's not treated like the rest of mainland China because supposedly it has the rule of law. But this bill would allow for an annual review to see if Hong Kong's legal system is really autonomous from the rest of China. And if not, the U.S. will take Hong Kong's special trade status away. It would also lay out a process for the president to impose sanctions and travel restrictions on Hong Kong authorities who are responsible for arbitrary detention and torture. And it makes sure that Hong Kongers who have been arrested for protesting would still be able to get visas to the U.S. The House also passed the Protect Hong Kong Act, which would ban the export of things like tear gas to Hong Kong police. Both bills still have to pass the Senate. Carrie Lam was not too excited.
I would like to express extreme regret that the U.S. House of Representatives approved legislation of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act this morning. A foreign government or a foreign parliament is meddling in Hong Kong's internal affair.
Oh, that's cute. She's learned to speak exactly like her masters in Beijing. But there is some good news for Carrie Lam in all this. The Hong Kong people have been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And technically, she's a Hong Kong people. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party is none too pleased by all the attention it's getting over Hong Kong. Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman Geng Shuang warned American lawmakers to stop meddling in China's internal affairs before falling off the edge of the cliff. To be fair, he's been watching a lot of Looney Tunes lately, while Chinese leader Xi Jinping has been reading a lot of fairy tales lately. On a recent trip to Nepal, he warned anyone who attempts to split any region from China will perish, their bodies smashed and bones ground to powder. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of rebellion. So the question on everyone's mind is whether the new Hong Kong legislation will affect the U.S.-China trade war. There does seem to be some movement on that. A preliminary deal has been agreed on that includes a commitment by China to buy $40 billion to $50 billion of American agricultural products per year. That would be much more than before the trade war, and President Trump was modest about his success as usual. The deal I just made with China is by far the greatest and biggest deal ever made for our great patriot farmers in the history of our country. Now there's the question that Trump even acknowledges about whether U.S. farmers can even produce that much. Though I'm sure that problem can be solved with a little science and a little moral flexibility. Genetically engineered spider corn, anyone? However, the preliminary deal hasn't been signed, and there's a whole bunch of other things it doesn't address. So the trade war is still not over. But it could be the start of the human spider corn wars. But it's not just Hong Kong the U.S. is worried about. The White House is also warning about untrackable Chinese ships carrying Iranian oil. The U.S. has imposed oil sanctions on Iran to tackle the country's nuclear program, and any country that buys Iranian oil faces sanctions too. But China was the largest importer of Iranian oil. Now there's concerns China will continue to buy Iranian oil, but smuggled on untrackable ships. Of course, when has the Communist Party ever done anything deceitful? Accusations have emerged that Apple's Safari browser is sending some user data to the Chinese company Tencent. Apparently, Safari has a privacy feature called fraudulent website warning, and Safari would send information to Google Safe Browsing and Tencent Safe Browsing. Oh, good. But Apple responded saying they don't share the website of the URL, and plus it only applies to mainland China. So don't worry, Apple would never lie to you. DreamWorks' latest film, Abominable, is being kicked out of theaters in Vietnam. That's because of this, a map used in the movie showing China's 9-dash line, China's territorial claim to the entire South China Sea, apparently even including Taiwan. Now, a Filipino official is calling for that scene to be cut in their country, which really isn't fair. After all, Hollywood has been a part of China since ancient times. But don't worry, it's not just Hollywood. Why, ESPN, reporting on the NBA China controversy, used this graphic.
Let's switch to the NBA, Matt. LeBron and the Lakers arrived in Shanghai, China.
Yes, let's take a look at this. Not only does this have the 9-dash line, it also has Taiwan and disputed territory with India called Arunachal Pradesh as part of China. Now, it's possible someone might have corrected this obvious blunder before it ever aired, but then again, ESPN did tell employees not to discuss China-Hong Kong politics in an internal memo. And now you know why I've spent 7 years of my life making a show warning Americans about the Chinese Communist Party. And that's it for this week's China News Headlines. And now it's time for me to answer a question from one of you, a fan who supports China Uncensored with $1 or more per episode by contributing to the crowdfunding website Patreon. Logan asks, do you feel the South Park episode, Banned in China, did a good job highlighting a lot of these issues? Logan is talking about a recent episode of South Park about U.S. companies and Hollywood self-censoring and generally selling out to appease Chinese censors. I think they did a great job with that episode. There's a reason why people in Hong Kong are playing it on the streets. It felt like the episode touched on the personal experiences of the writers having to deal with all the Hollywood censorship to appease the Chinese Communist Party. And they didn't pull their punches. I mean, they even brought up organ harvesting. That's about as third rail an issue as you can get with China. Really, I think South Park combined with the NBA scandal did a great job of helping more Americans than ever realize that the Chinese Communist Party is a horrible authoritarian regime and just how much control they have in the United States. All because of money. The episode even showed the NBA and LeBron James, and this was before the NBA scandal happened later that week. Thanks for your question, Logan. And if you have a question for me you want to hear answered on the show, sign up to join the China Uncensored 50-cent army by supporting the show with $1 or more per episode. Again, YouTube is demonetizing us so much that we would have to shut down the show if it weren't for your support. And to everyone, thanks for watching. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time.